Welcome back to the OU Insider YouTube channel, and welcome back to Quick Slants. Parker Thune alongside Jesse Crittenden. As Oklahoma spring football continues to creep closer and closer, we continue our in-depth look at the entire picture for Brent Venables and the Sooner football program heading into year 2. And today, we're here to tackle the interior defensive line. We asked you in the comments section on the last video which position groups, which individuals, which situations, which narratives you wanted us to tackle in this video series. D Graham 031588 on YouTube asked, I'm very curious about interior defensive line for next year. Who will be in the rotation, and who do you see making big leaps under Todd Bates? So, Jesse, the floor is yours as we look at the interior defensive line. The Sooners are replacing both starters in Jalen Redmond and Jeffrey Johnson. How do you think the picture all comes together this year?
Yeah, no, and I think defensive line, again, I think is one of the more looked at areas heading into the spring and heading into next season, particularly considering how much of a struggle it was for the defensive line at times last year, particularly the interior defensive linemen. I mean, that's an area that they simply needed more production from. So I think when you look at the defensive line heading into the spring, again, yeah, you lose basically two starters there. Again, I think there's a lot of time up for grabs, and it's kind of similar to what we talked about with the linebackers. I actually think in a lot of ways, it hurts to lose Jalen Redmond, it hurts to lose guys like that. But if you look at this group, I think you've got a pretty good mix of transfer portal guys that really bring some experience, like someone like Jacob Lacey. I think is a guy that obviously immediately comes to mind. But I think there's also looking in the incoming freshmen. I think there are guys that, there's highly touted guys in the recruiting class that I think can come in and really vie for playing time right away. And there were a couple of comments I noticed in the video we did over the linebackers that, part of maybe the struggles that the linebackers had last year was because of the lack of production at the defensive line. And Brent Venables talked about how, it's going to be crucial for the defensive line to generate more pressure. Well, again, through the transfer portal and through the incoming freshmen that are coming in, I think they did a pretty good job of adding some guys that have a lot of potential, maybe aren't immediately ready year one, but have a lot of potential. And I think they did a pretty good job of adding some guys that have some experience that I think can make an impact right away.
Now, I think one of the concerns that the public will likely have about the interior defensive line, Jesse, is you think back to 2021 and the issues that everybody had with Alex Grinch and the way that he ran his defense, and specifically how he dealt with his defensive tackles and interior defensive linemen. They didn't have anybody on that roster over 295 pounds, and that was by design. Alex Grinch didn't want those guys playing at north of 295 pounds. Well, you look at the roster right now, and among the scholarship defensive linemen, obviously we have not gotten updated spring measurables for any of these guys, but the heaviest player listed at the defensive tackle position is Isaiah Coe at 298. So how much do you worry about lack of bulk, lack of mass coming into play?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And again, I probably should have prefaced everything I said earlier by saying I still think that group is far from being a complete group under Brent Venables. I do think there's a lot of reasons to be a little bit more optimistic, especially compared to last year. But yeah, certainly I think that's still going to be an issue. I don't think the issues that they had last year in terms of getting consistent pressure in the backfield, those things aren't going to go away in 1 year. And yeah, I think you do worry about, especially with the SEC move coming in just a year, I do think you worry a little bit about the size and the interior lineman. I'm also curious how those positions are going to shake out. It's, somebody like Ronald Bothroyd that has spent a lot of time at D end. That he even alluded to during the media availabilities a few weeks ago that he might spend some time inside, but I don't, I think he's more like 270, 275. So I think, yeah, that's certainly, but I think part of the optimism too is I think they realized the defensive line was a real area of concern, one of the biggest areas of concern last year. And I think if there's any position group that's going to get a lot of time they're going to spend a lot of time on in terms of Jerry Schmidt workouts and getting guys through the program, getting bulked up. I do think it's that position group, but yeah, that's certainly a concern. I don't think that was a concern last year. I don't think that's going to go away in 1 year.
They have a wealth of experience among this group. You look at the 10 interior defensive linemen on scholarship right now. 5 of them are seniors: Jacob Lacey, Jordan Kelly, Corey Roberson, Rondell Bothroyd, Isaiah Coe. Bothroyd, that's a 1-year rental. Jordan Kelly, he's in his final year as a Sooner. Isaiah Coe, it's his last year at college ball as well. So none of these guys have more than 2 years of eligibility left. You throw in Texas State transfer Devon Sears, who's a junior. He's got 2 years left. And so when you're looking to the next generation, there are some guys that have seen action in the Crimson and Cream before, namely Kelvin Gilliam, the redshirt sophomore, Grayson Halton, rising true sophomore, and your 2 incoming early enrollee freshmen in Derek LeBlanc and Ashton Sanders. So I want to focus specifically on Gilliam and Halton, Jesse. Those are younger guys that both broke onto the field early in their career at Oklahoma and were able to supplant veterans that had more experience and had been in the program longer at a certain point. How much of an impact do you think those guys make in 2023, and how much of a lane is there throughout spring and throughout fall camp for them to potentially leapfrog the likes of Kelly, Lacey, Bothroyd on this depth chart if they prove worthy?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those 2 guys. I think that's been the whole thing with both of those guys is that there's certainly potential. They've been on the field before, at least in spurts, and have made an impact. But I mean, I think the one thing has been consistency, and I think that was something that hurt them a little bit last year. But I think when you look at those 2 guys specifically, not only the how long they've been around the program, I think particularly somebody like Grayson Halton, who you can see what he's supposed to be on the field. You can see what it looks like if he puts all of the pieces together. I mean, I think in reality, I think those 2 guys, I mean, it's going to be a fight for playing time in there. But Brent talked specifically about Grayson Halton a little bit. That's a guy that has been coming along, and so I think for the spring in particular, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all kind of shakes out. But those 2 guys have been around the program. You can see the potential both on and off the field. Now I think it's can they get a little bit more consistent? Can they put some things together?
Let's talk about ceiling, Jesse, because as we look at this group and you think back to the play on the interior defensive line in 2022, Jalen Redmond and Jeffrey Johnson were just kind of there for much of the season. Didn't really make a huge impact in terms of their ability to stuff the run or pursue the passer. They just kind of existed at the core of that defense for the vast majority of the 2022 campaign. And so as you look at this group again, you've got guys with starting experience: Bothroyd, Lacey, Coe, etc. But none of these guys have really proven, perhaps Bothroyd has to an extent at Wake Forest, but none of these guys have really proven that they have what it takes to be an impact player, a true impact player at defensive tackle. So as you evaluate this group, who do you think has the highest ceiling in that regard? If somebody really makes the productive leap, if somebody really makes the physical leap in workout sessions throughout the spring and fall to be able to show up on the field in September and truly dominate on the interior defensive line, if you had to peg 1 or 2 guys that fit that bill in your mind, who are those guys?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good question, because I think when you look at the group, I think you see a lot of potential, but I think the one thing that's hard to see, or the one thing that OU really needs, is a standout, somebody that is going to consistently every game really make plays on the defensive line. I think there are honestly a few candidates just in terms of who have that potential. But I think Isaiah Coe is the first name that comes to mind. He really showed flashes last year, made some plays. I think the thing that's holding him back is earning more playing time on the field, earning more trust from the coaching staff. But I think he showed enough, particularly last year, that he had made some gains. I think he's got to know that the opportunity is there for him to come in and dominate the snaps and build on last year. I've got to believe he understands that he's got that opportunity. And I really think the other guy is Bothroyd. I really do. I do think he has spent most of his time at D end. So I think it is going to be interesting to see how much time, or like where he spends his time. The majority of the time, how much does he move back and forth? But I think he's going to get a lot of time on the inside. And I really think he's a guy, it is a little weird because he's a 1-year rental, but I really think he's a guy, I was pretty impressed talking with him the other day, just in terms of where he's at mentally, how he's kind of approaching this season. And I think he's a guy that I think brings a mix of physicality and a mental aspect when it comes to experience and mindset, things like that. He's a guy that I've got my eye on early. I think those are the two guys. And again, you could say Devon Sears, and there's other guys and things like that, but those are the two guys that I think that really stand out to me in terms of those are who I'm maybe looking at the most to have an impact right away.
So if I asked you to pick the two starters at defensive tackle, are those the two guys you're rolling with?
Oh, that's a good man. I guess if I'm forced to make a decision right now, yes, that's who I'm going with. Who are you going with?
No, because we're on the same page in that case. My projected starting defensive line, as things stand right now, heading into the fall of 2023, would be Ethan Downs, Bothroyd, Isaiah Coe, R. Mason Thomas off the edge. At least that's how I project things playing out. Naturally, that's going to change. There could be injuries. There could be guys that really pop, both on the interior and on the edge. Everybody is raving early on over PJ Adebawore and what he could become, and perhaps how quickly he could become that at the University of Oklahoma. So there may be a wrench thrown in all of this when you look at the depth chart between now and when the Sooners open their season in early September at home against Arkansas State. But I do think Rondell Bothroyd and Isaiah Coe are the two guys, as you mentioned. Agree with you 100%. Those are the two guys that offer you the highest ceiling for impact play on the interior defensive line. That's it for this installment of Quick Slants. For Jesse Crittenden, I am Parker Thune. As always, let us know in the comments section what you want us to hit next. Is it a player? Is it a position group? Is it a coach? Is it something pertaining to recruiting? Whatever it is that you'd like us to discuss, our goal is to provide you with these quick, digestible 10, 15-minute videos to bring you up to speed on everything going on within the OU football program. So whatever you want, we will provide. Let us know. That's all for Quick Slants. Stay here on the OU Insider YouTube channel for more content in the days ahead, and head over to ouinsider.com to grab a VIP subscription if you haven't already. We'll catch you next time.